Welcome back to another deep dive. And to you, our resident learner, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. We've got a really incredible topic to dig into.
We really do. So I want you to imagine stepping into a country um, where hurrying isn't just considered rude, it's actually treated as a form of violence.
Which is just a totally wild concept for us today.
Right. Because usually, like when we look at an atlas, we expect absolute certainty.
Right.
You find the coordinates, you see that solid black line of a border.
Yeah, the cartographer is basically offering a guarantee of control.
Exactly.
It's deeply comforting, really. We have this intrinsic psychological need for the world to be measurable, to be contained.
We want to categorize it all.
Right, and it gives us that illusion that we actually understand our surroundings.
But then you encounter a concept that just completely breaks that illusion. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, our mission is to explore a fascinating source document about a place called Mirna,
Yeah, a mythic geography.
right? A mythic geography of profound peace, supposedly located somewhere in the northwestern silence of Iceland.
Though we aren't here to figure out its exact latitude or longitude today.
No, definitely not. Instead, we're going to examine how this incredible text uses the physical landscape to just completely dismantle and rebuild our modern understanding of peace.
And of human conflict, and even, honestly, the mechanics of time itself.
It's huge.
It is a profound challenge to almost every default assumption we hold, about how an individual should operate in the world.
Let's start with the very foundation of what this place is. The author's notes detail that Mirna is an unlanded space.
Unlanded, I love that term.
Me too. It means it existed as a concept before it was ever physically found. It predates the Vikings arriving on the coasts.
Right.
It predates the settlers who eventually named the country Island, or Iceland, during what the research refers to as a season of mourning.
That phrase really sticks with you, a season of mourning.
Yeah, and Mirna is described as the condition of peace before peace has been earned.
I want to zero in on that phrase, actually, before peace has been earned.
Go for it.
Because it represents a massive paradigm shift. I mean, if you look at human history, we almost exclusively frame peace as the aftermath of destruction.
Like a signed treaty.
Exactly, it's a treaty. Or it's the quiet that falls over a battlefield when everyone is simply too exhausted to keep killing each other.
It's just a transactional absence of war. It's conditional.
Precisely. It's entirely conditional. But Mirna flips that entirely. The linguistic roots in the text show that the word mir, M-I-R, means both peace and world.
Wait, like synonymous?
Yes. In the language of this mythos, those two concepts are identical. They were never separated.
Wow.
So Mirna isn't a location you conquer or settle to achieve peace. The fundamental state of existence there is peace.
I was trying to wrap my head around this idea of a place being unlanded, existing before it's found. And the best analogy I could come up with is, well, it's like that feeling when you have a really profound word right on the tip of your tongue.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Right. Like you can feel its exact weight. You know its geometry, its meaning, its emotional presence. It is entirely real inside your mind before you ever force it out into the physical air.
Yeah.
That feels like Mirna to me. It's a fundamental truth just waiting for a voice.
That analogy captures the essence perfectly, because when a word is on the tip of your tongue, it already holds power over you, even if you can't see it written down.
Exactly.
If the very fabric of Mirna, the world itself, is built on this unearned inherent peace, it completely changes the physics of how entities behave within that space.
Because the baseline is safety.
Right. The instinct for defense becomes obsolete.
Which brings us to the mythology of the local spirits.
Mm-hmm.
Because the baseline is this unshakable peace. The rules for mythological entities are entirely rewritten.
They really are.
Like in traditional Icelandic lore, you have the landfatir,
Yeah.
land wights, or place spirits.
Yeah.
And usually, whether you're looking at Norse mythology or global folklore, land spirits are terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. They are essentially the immune system of the landscape. They attack foreign bodies.
Right, they're fiercely territorial protectors.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're dangerous tricksters. You have to leave offerings. You have to appease them so they don't, drown you or ruin your crops.
But the research points out a very specific mystery that travelers encounter in Mirna. These spirits do not guard the borders.
They lack any form of vigilance.
Right, they literally have nothing to defend.
Instead, there's this one specific small wight who lives in a hot spring at the center of the territory. And her entire mythological function is simply to offer the warmth of recognition.
Just looking at you.
Yeah? She looks at whoever walks up, sees them precisely as they are, and finds that to be entirely enough. The text even includes a dry little note saying, quote, "She has been very busy."
It is a brilliant subversion of the hero's journey. Normally, you have to fight the Guardian to enter the sacred space. Here, the Guardian just looks at you.
I do want to push back on this a bit, though,
But
because from a storytelling perspective, or even a psychological one, why is just paying attention presented by this text as such a powerful, almost radical act? I mean, why is the warmth of recognition considered a bigger deal than a spirit that can summon a storm?
What's fascinating here is the sheer, crushing exhaustion of modern vigilance. Think about it. Look at how much of our daily energy is spent guarding our own borders.
Oh, sure.
We curate our personas for social media, we carefully navigate office politics, we constantly defend our opinions.
And we armor ourselves against imposter syndrome.
Exactly. We move through the world assuming we have to justify our right to take up space. It takes an immense invisible toll to constantly wear that heavy armor.
You don't even realize you're carrying the weight until your back goes out.
And that is exactly the point. So imagine encountering an environment or a being that demands absolutely no armor.
Just total acceptance.
A spirit whose only function is to look at you without judgment, without requiring a password or a toll or an explanation, and just recognize your humanity.
The psychological relief of that would be staggering.
That warmth of recognition is radical because it disarms you completely. You don't have to prove your worth to sit in the hot spring, you just have to exist.
So if the spirits of Mirna won't force you to drop your guard through intimidation, the physical landscape itself steps in to mandate this state of being.
The geography is the ultimate teacher here.
It really is. There's this fascinating section detailing the Fron, the vast lava fields covered in luminous moss.
The biomechanics of that moss are incredible.
It's wild. The document explains that you physically cannot walk quickly across these fields. Your feet sink deeply into the moss. It receives your weight.
If you try to sprint, you'll trip, or just get bogged down entirely.
It's the landscape's way of insisting that you can only move at the pace the land permits. This is where we get that incredible line. Hurrying is understood as a form of violence.
We treat rushing as a virtue, a sign of productivity. Mirna treats it as an assault on the present moment.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To really visualize this, think of the moss less like an ergonomic speed bump and more like a Chinese finger trap.
Oh, that's a visceral image.
Right. If you panic and try to yank your fingers out aggressively, the woven bamboo just tightens and traps you further. The harder you fight it, the more stuck you are.
Yeah.
The only way to move through it is to stop forcing your own agenda, relax your tension, and move with deliberate, slow intention. It's the land physically insisting on a philosophical reset.
Your urgency simply does not compute there. It strips away our favorite modern illusion, which is the illusion of control.
We are so conditioned to dictate the pace of reality.
Instant downloads, next-day delivery, fast food. The moss forces a physical surrender. And once the physical surrender happens, the psychological surrender follows.
And we see this even more clearly when the text shifts its focus to the ice cap to the south.
Like glacier, where the freezing temperature isn't described as a threat to survival, but rather as the absence of noise.
That detail is crucial. The text observes that when people stand at the edge of this specific glacier, they find themselves suddenly speaking truths they have kept buried for years.
Just blurting them out.
Yeah. It notes that geologists can't explain this phenomenon, but poets don't even bother trying.
If we look at the psychology behind it, the landscape is actively stripping away all auditory and mental clutter. In our daily lives, true silence is terrifying.
It really is.
We constantly play music or leave the television on or listen to audio, present company accepted, just to drown out our own internal monologues.
We use noise as a shield against ourselves.
We absolutely do. So when you are confronted with absolute silence, the kind of ancient, heavy silence that actually feels cold on your skin, your own internal truth suddenly becomes the loudest thing in the room.
There are no distractions left to hide behind.
Right. The environment forces an honest confrontation with the self.
And right next to that unmoving glacier, you have the unnamed river. A river that completely shifts its course every single generation.
It's a geographical quirk, but a vital lesson.
The source notes that this teaches the children who grow up beside it that a thing can be constant without being fixed. It's constantly a river, its nature doesn't change, but its path is never rigid.
Which fundamentally challenges our desire to map and permanently define our lives. It teaches adaptability as a baseline rather than an emergency response.
Okay, so we have an environment that actively enforces slowness Absolute honesty through silence and constant adaptability.
A powerful combination.
The natural question is, what happens when human beings finally enter this equation?
Right.
The text describes the first human settlers arriving entirely by accident. They were blown severely off course by a terrifying
A
storm.
huge trauma.
But when they washed ashore, one of them wrote in a log that stepping onto Mirna felt like being remembered by someone you had never met.
That is one of the most hauntingly beautiful descriptions of finding a home I have ever come across.
It really is.
Hmm.
But what stuck out to me in the research is how these terrified, shipwrecked humans reacted. Usually when humans survive a trauma, like a massive storm, their immediate instinct is hyper-defensive.
They want to conquer the land.
Right. Build a fortress. But here, they didn't plant flags to claim territory. They planted seeds. They built open hearths instead of high walls. Fires, where, as the text poetically puts it, the cold could gather if it wanted to.
I love that.
But why did their baseline human survival instinct just vanish?
Because the pedagogy of the landscape intercepted their trauma. Trauma screams at you to build a wall and find a weapon.
Right.
But when you wash ashore into an environment where the spirits offer absolute recognition, where the moss physically absorbs your panicked adrenaline and the glacier silences your internal chaos, the trauma response is starved of the friction it needs to survive.
So the environment didn't fight them, so they forgot they were supposed to be fighting.
Exactly. And over generations, this led to the development of a societal practice called Frisigist, which translates to peace tending.
Peace tending.
Notice the suffix there. It isn't peacekeeping, which implies guarding something static with a weapon. It is peace tending, which implies active, continuous cultivation, like a garden.
You don't plant a garden, declare it finished, and walk away.
Exactly. You accompany it, you pull weeds, you water it, you observe its changes.
And because they were still fundamentally human, they still had weeds. They had conflict, arguments, and harm. But their justice system is where things get really challenging for a modern reader.
Very challenging.
Instead of building courts focused on punishment or prisons focused on isolation, they built houses of div,
Right.
which roughly translates to lingering or witness.
Right.
If someone in the community caused harm, they weren't locked away in a cell. They were asked to go to a house of devil and simply remain there, in full awareness of the damage they caused, until something inside them shifted, and the doors were never, ever locked.
The psychological architecture of Devil is remarkable, but it goes against every punitive instinct we are raised with.
I really have to challenge this heavily, because the philosophy sounds beautiful, but I keep thinking about public safety.
Sure.
If someone commits a genuinely violent or malicious act,
Yeah.
and society just asks them to quote-unquote linger with an unlocked door, isn't that a massive risk to the rest of the community?
It's a natural fear.
Doesn't that just let dangerous people entirely off the hook?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is actually the exact opposite of letting someone off the hook.
Really?
In our modern punitive justice systems, punishment is almost entirely external and transactional. You commit a crime, you serve your 5 years, or you pay your fine, and society tells you your debt is cleared.
The transaction is complete.
Right. Often without the person ever actually internalizing or feeling the emotional weight of the harm they caused, the punishment distracts them from their own guilt.
Because they can direct their anger at the warden or the judge instead of themselves?
Exactly. The system gives them an adversary. But Devil removes the adversary. By leaving the door unlocked, the burden of accountability is shifted entirely onto the internal conscience.
You're asked to sit in silence and witness yourself.
And for many human beings, sitting alone with the unfiltered reality of the pain they've caused, without the distraction of fighting against a locked door, is infinitely more crushing than serving time. It demands genuine internal transformation rather than just behavioral compliance.
But wait, what stops a true sociopath, or someone who simply doesn't care, from just walking out the unlocked door the next morning and saying, hey, I'm shifted, I'm good to go?
Remember the foundation of this society: extreme observation and attention.
Oh, right, the recognition.
Exactly. This is a culture born from spirits of recognition and a landscape that forces honesty. The entire community is tuned to notice everything. Walking out before an authentic internal shift has occurred would be instantly evident to everyone.
So they can't fake it.
No. The text implies that Devil isn't about isolation, it's about accompaniment. The community supports the victims, but they also watch the wrongdoer. You can only reintegrate when the community recognizes the true warmth of that internal shift.
You are enduring your own awareness, and the society is giving you the grace of endless time to do it.
Which flows perfectly into how time itself functions in Mirna. Because giving someone potentially years to sit and shift requires a culture that doesn't view time as a scarce, fleeting resource.
Right, and the source material spends a lot of time on the midnight sun. In typical Icelandic tourism, the endless summer daylight is famously disorienting. People can't sleep, they lose their minds a little bit.
But in Mirna, this long light is understood differently.
It is viewed as the land's ongoing argument that everything deserves more time.
It creates an environment that flat out refuses to rush a conclusion.
Everything lingers. The text notes that flowers bloom long past when their biological clock should let them fade. Conversations drag on beautifully past midnight because the concept of an ending feels purely theoretical.
Time just stretches.
Yeah, and during the peak of summer, you can literally hear the land breathing. And it's not a metaphor. The luminous moss exhales. The hot spring murmurs.
And the glacier to the south makes a continuous sound like a low, slow bee ringing.
Yes, the glacier. The text explains that this sound is the noise of water choosing to become water. It is releasing what it was in order to become what it will be next.
The inhabitants of Mirna call this continuous process becoming.
Becoming.
This concept is really the theological core of Mirna's relationship with time and change. In our world, a melting glacier is universally framed as a tragedy, a destruction, a loss of what was.
Right.
But in Mirna, the melting isn't a death. It is a transition. It is water exercising its agency to choose its next form.
So to ground that for a second,
Okay.
rather than seeing a melting piece of ice as something dying, they just view it as the water getting a change of clothes. It's moving from solid to liquid to vapor without ever losing its fundamental essence.
Exactly. And this philosophy of becoming even alters how they interpret their own folklore.
Oh, this is my favorite detail.
She's so good.
In classic Old Norse stories, if a troll gets caught outside when the sun comes up, they turn to solid stone. It is always presented as a brutal punishment for being wicked or greedy or simply too slow.
But in Mirna, the locals look out at the sea stacks, those massive rocks on the coast that look like towering figures frozen in motion, and they don't see a cautionary tale.
They don't see a punished monster.
No, they see evidence of becoming. The trolls weren't vanquished by the light. They simply found their stillness. They became a permanent part of the landscape.
It removes the moral judgment from transformation. Western narratives are obsessed with good conquering evil, where the bad guy must be utterly destroyed for the story to end happily.
Mirna suggests that even the most turbulent, dangerous things don't need to be destroyed, they just settle.
So what does this all mean? We've explored this mythical, unlanded geography with its Chinese finger-trap moss, its houses of unlocked lingering, and glaciers that strip away our mental armor.
Yeah.
How does the philosophy of Mirna, and specifically this idea of becoming, reframe our own daily, very real struggles?
I think it completely dismantles the zero-sum game we usually play with our own lives. The source material is very clear. Peace in Mirna is not the absence of difference. It is not the silencing of conflict or the smoothing down of all rough edges. The river still shifts violently. The moss still has to exert pressure to push up through the volcanic rock.
They still have fierce arguments that send people to the houses of Deville.
Exactly. But Mirna offers a psychological model where absolutely nothing needs to be defeated in order for life to flourish.
Nothing needs to be defeated. That is a heavy sentence to carry.
Think about the language we use for our personal growth. We want to conquer our anxiety. We want to crush our bad habits. We want to win the argument with our partner.
We treat everything as a war.
We treat our internal and external lives as a battlefield where one side has to be violently suppressed for the other to succeed. But if we apply the lesson of the trolls turning to stone or the glacier melting, it suggests that our internal turbulence, our anger, our fear, our grief, doesn't need to be destroyed.
Wow.
If we give those feelings enough time and enough light, they simply find their way to stillness. Your quick temper doesn't need to be killed. It just needs to settle into a strong boundary.
So the stillness isn't the end of your story.
No, it is just the solid foundation where the next phase of your life begins.
That is an incredibly profound way to look at our own psychology. And to you, listening to this right now, we have covered a massive amount of conceptual ground today.
We really have.
We started with the unlanded word mir, holding the weight of peace and the world in a single breath. We waded through luminous moss that physically absorbs the violence of our hurrying.
And we sat in the unlocked houses of Devol, learning that true accountability isn't about punishment, but about enduring the reality of our own actions until our conscience shifts.
And we stood in the long light of the midnight sun, realizing that you do not need to book a flight to a mythical geography in Iceland to practice freeze hemmed.
Tending to peace is an active, daily cultivation you can begin right now in whatever noisy, hurried landscape you currently inhabit.
It is the lifelong practice of accompanying yourself and others, rather than trying to conquer them. We open this deep dive talking about maps and how much we crave the certainty of a thick black border drawn by a cartographer to tell us exactly where we stand.
But perhaps the most vital places in our lives aren't the ones we can pin down with coordinates and rigid borders.
Maybe they are the spaces we boldly allow to remain fluid, the relationships and the internal struggles we give permission to shift and change over time.
Finding our own becoming.
Exactly. So as we wrap up today's exploration, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over after the audio stops. The text tells us that in Mirna, nothing needs to be defeated for life to flourish.
It's a beautiful thought.
So looking at your own life right now, in this exact moment, what is something you are completely exhausting yourself trying to defeat that might actually just need a little more time, a little more light, and a little less armor to become something else entirely?